information on our library's consultation. My name is Robert Hunt. I'm the interim head of assets and involvement in Place department in the council, responsible for libraries, museums and archives, and parks and green spaces. So I would like to start by just reminding you all that this webinar is being recorded, and by remaining part of the webinar, you are consenting to be, you are giving your permission to be recorded. If not, now's the opportunity for you to leave. The meeting will be recorded and published online early next week, so you would be able to look back if you needed to. So I'd like to start by introducing Councillor Oliver Lewis, just to give a little update. Over to you, Councillor Lewis.
Thanks, Rob. Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name's Oliver Lewis, and I'm the Council's Cabinet Member for Culture and Regeneration. It's really good to see so many people here this morning. It's great that in Croydon we have so many people who are passionate about our library service. As you'll all be aware, I'm sure, the council is in a very difficult financial situation. And as a result of this, we're having to take some very, very tough decisions in services right across the council, including in libraries. We're currently out to consultation on the future of 5 libraries in the borough, and they are Broad Green, South Norwood, Shirley, Sanderstead and Bradmore Green. I'm pleased that we have been able to extend the first phase of the consultation now, and this will now run until the 14th of March. And these webinars are an important part of the consultation. This is the first, the kind of general session, followed by one later today with the Community Run Libraries Network, and then 5 next week for each of the 5 affected libraries. We hope that through the consultation, we may be able to develop some community-run library models that maintain the current level of library service, but also help us to dramatically reduce our expenditure. Look, I'll leave it there, Rob. I'm happy to take questions throughout the session, but I just want to finish by saying thanks again to everyone who's on the call today, and thanks to all of our hardworking library staff for everything that they are doing for the consultation and everything they have done throughout incredibly challenging times in the pandemic. Thanks, Rob.
Thanks, Councillor Lewis. So I'll now move over into our presentation. Just bear with me a second as I open that up. So just a reminder for those of you who have only just joined, the session is being recorded for those who are unable to attend. If you do not give your permission to be recorded, now's your opportunity to leave the meeting, and you'll be able to look back at the recording online at a later date. I'm Robert Hunt, Interim Head of Assets and Involvement in Place Department. And just to give a bit of background to those of you who may be coming to this afresh, the library's consultation is taking part in 2 phases. The first phase was launched on the 14th of January, and we've now extended the deadline to the 14th of March. We'll be hosting webinars for each of our libraries. So the first session today is about the overarching library service. We have a session shortly after this one at 12 o'clock that will cover community run and voluntary run library services with support from a number of people from across the country who have operated community run libraries. And then, as Councillor Lewis mentioned, there will be individual webinars on Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday for each of the 5 libraries. So Broad Green, Bradmore Green, Sanderstead, Shirley and South Norwood libraries. There is a survey that we are asking our residents to complete, library members and non-library members, to give us as much information as possible to build up a picture of how our service is currently used, how people would like it to be used, where there are strengths and weaknesses, where there are opportunities for change. So we welcome as many surveys as possible. These can be completed multiple times by individuals. We're not limiting that to one entry per person. So please do complete the survey. If you are unable to get online, paper copies can be made available, and details will be provided at the end of the webinar as to how you can contact a member of the libraries team who will post those out to you. And once we've ended the consultation period on the 14th of March, we will gather all of that really valuable feedback from yourselves and look at a number of different options. So we'll report our initial findings to scrutiny on the 30th of March for them to answer questions from within the council to outline our next steps and the direction of travel based upon the feedback that we received so far. We'll then move into a second phase, which is where we take some sort of definite plans based upon the feedback back out to yourselves to really sort of shore up what we're trying to do and what we received back. So with that, we will write a report to go to Cabinet in May that outlines our proposals, and then during May and June we'll consult on the phase 2 options, operating a similar process, which will then allow you to provide additional feedback. Once the second phase of consultation is finished, we'll then move into a period where we further scrutinise and finalise our decision making through scrutiny, Cabinet and full council before looking to implement any plans in the autumn. So as of the 13th of February, we received 1,493 respondents to our survey, and we have now surpassed 1,500, which is really positive to see. It shows just how interested and passionate our residents are about our library service, which is really nice. We've had a range of FOIs and inquiries to go alongside those survey respondents so far. So we are gathering all of that information together and started to analyse what we can so far. So I'll now move into some of the initial feedback that we received. Sorry about that. So today we've received respondents from all over Croydon and asked them which is their local library. Of those who have answered that question, 1,300 or over 90% are current members of the library service, and nearly 120 are non-members. So it just goes to show sort of the passion that people who use the library service have for their local libraries. And from our responses so far, which isn't surprising, the majority of the people that have responded claim that their local library is one of the ones that are a part of our proposal. We then asked the question as to what are the top 3 services that people use our libraries for, and 1,351 respondents so far answered at least 3 of the different options. And some of the key themes that we're getting back from this initial phase of feedback is around people are really interested in browsing and borrowing books. As you can see, 87% of people have responded that that's important to them. Events and activities such as rhyme time, reading groups, story times are very important to people. Digital access, so logging on and using the computers and the Wi-Fi, printing, again, very important to people and as a service that the libraries provide. And then finally, study and workspace. People have identified that is a service that they need from their local library. So just to run through a little bit more detail around each of the libraries where we are proposing to close or operate on a cost-neutral basis. So Bradmore Green Library currently operates at 44.5 hours per week. We get over 41,500 visits annually, but that only makes up 2.8% of all the visits across Croydon. We have 11,960 books, and we've issued 24,774, which again is only 4.2% of all the issues across the borough. There are 5 PCs for adults and children, and there are 1,747 IT sessions available, but of those, only 14.7% of the hours are actually booked. Broad Green Library operates 35.5 hours per week. It sees 38,929 visits annually, but that's 2.6% of the overall Croydon number of visits. There are 12,919 books, which generate 17,258 issues annually, but again, that's just short of 3% of the overall issues within Croydon. There are 12 PCs for adults and children, and of the 4,353 IT sessions, only 15% of those hours are currently booked. Sanderstead Library is open for 34.5 hours per week. There are 35,000 annual visits, which make up 2.4% of the overall visits within Croydon. There are 16,409 books, which make up just over 46,000 issues, which is 7.96% of the overall issues within Croydon. There are 6 PCs for children and adults, and of those 1,945 IT sessions available, 22.8% of the hours are actually utilised. In Shirley Library, it's open for 44.5 hours per week. There are 29,617 visits per year, of which 2.1% within the overall Croydon number of visits. There are 18,591 books, and they generate 29,270 issues, which is just over 5% of the overall issues within Croydon. There are 7 PCs for adults and children, 4,190 IT sessions, which make up 22% of the hours available to book. And finally, South Norwood Library, which is opens for 34.5 hours per week. There are 39,295 annual visits, which makes up 2.68% of the overall visits within Croydon. There are 16,236 books, which generate 27,107 issues, which is just over 4.6% of the overall across Croydon. There are 11 PCs for adults and children, which generate 7,244 IT sessions, and they use 46.7% of the time. We are hosting a number of consultation webinars. This is the first, which will be followed by another webinar at 12 o'clock with our voluntary library peer group, running between 12 and 1. On Monday, there is a session between 6 and 7 o'clock at South Norwood Library. There is another 2 on Tuesday, between 5:30 till 6:30 for Broad Green Library, and 6:45 to 7:45 for Shirley Library. And then on Wednesday, 5:30 till 6:30 for Bradmore Green Library, and 6:45 to 7:45 for Sanderstead Library. So from our library's consultation so far, there have been many questions asked, and we've just tried to pick out some of the themes and flavours of those questions so far. We've been asked for more details around visits and issues over the last 5 years rather than just the last year, and so I'll go into a little bit more detail just after this slide, but those details will be published online on our library's consultation website, so that you've got access to all of that information. We've been asked for more building costs, operational costs, maintenance and repair costs, and those again will be made available on our website, and details around our book stock, both from a cost and number perspective. So looking at our visits, 2015 to 2020, looking specifically at the 5 libraries that are affected, as you can see from the graph, there is a downward trend in all of our library visits. It is worth noting that Sanderstead Library was open for an extra day in June and July 2019, while Selsdon Library was closed for a refurbishment. And in addition, Broad Green Library was open for an additional day between September and March 2019 to 20, while Norbury Library was closed for refurbishment. And unfortunately, that didn't seem to add to the number of visits that within Broad Green Library during that time. So, as you can see, it's a general downward trend within the number of visits across across these libraries. That trend then also is replicated in the number of book issues that we've received in that time. So over the last 5 years, Bradmore Green has reduced from 36,000 book issues per year down to 24,700. Broad Green from 40,000 to 17,000. Sanderstead has remained relatively stable, but again did have the additional opening days in June and July 2019, but a reduction from 47,000 down to 46,000. But that does look like it was boosted by the Selsdon refurbishment, because the previous year in 2018-19, the number of book issues was down to 39,000. Shirley, again, a reduction from 43,000 to 29,000, and South Norwood Library from 32,000 to 27,000. So that general trend is on a downward trajectory. Across our those libraries, IT usage is also reducing. So a significant reduction of 48% at Bradmore Green, 43% Broad Green, 36% at Shirley, and 35% at South Norwood. The reduction was less at Sanderstead, comparing 2015 to 2019-20. However, if you look at 2015 to 2018-19, that's actually a reduction of 29% once you take out the Selsdon refurbishment factor. We've also received a number of requests for further information around operational expenditure, maintenance and repairs, utilities, and cost for books. Our operational expenditure identified here looks at income generated through fines and fees for late charges, and for money generated from sales of small items such as food waste bags, posters, and other small bits of stationery. Our expenditure is generally made up of business rates that we have to pay on the buildings, and these are subsidised within the council at the moment, as well as cash handling fees for the petty cash that we receive for fines and fees, and the small amount of income from sales. We were asked in addition for maintenance and repair costs. So looking back over the last 3 years, we provided a breakdown of reactive maintenance costs. So that's where something breaks down without notice, a burst pipe, for example, or a broken radiator. And for those costs, you can see that they're relatively stable year on year. Bradmore Green had a reactive maintenance cost of £6,800 in 18-19, which reduced then down to £3,800 in 19-20, and down further still to £1,153 in so far in 2020, and that trend sort of is generally seen across the other libraries. In addition, we also have planned preventative maintenance costs. So these are the things that we can see in advance that need to be repaired or replaced. And again, those are small amounts, generally for servicing and repairs and replacement of smaller items. So far, we've received several inquiries for questioning or requesting information around our book stock. Our books are purchased centrally as a borough rather than for each individual library, although we have specifically purchased books where we've done refurbishments to replenish and re-energise newly refurbished libraries, so Selsdon and Norbury. For each of the 5 libraries that are proposed, so Broad Green, Bradmore Green, Sanderstead, Shirley, and South Norwood, we spend approximately £10,000 each on those libraries in 2019-20. We do have, as part of our procurement and contracts for book purchase, a discounted rate for the books that we do buy because we buy in bulk. Unfortunately, we're unable to give details of that information, which was requested as an FOI because it is commercially sensitive. But we can give a general indication that we do receive discounts on the books that we buy, but it does differ between adults, children's, large print, fiction, non-fiction. There have been questions around sort of our current closure and why Croydon libraries are still closed, and other boroughs have been able to keep their libraries open during COVID. I'd like to reassure you that we are trying to operate as the best service we possibly can at the moment, based upon advice received at the start of the third lockdown from our colleagues in public health. We were advised that our click and collect service should close to avoid unnecessary travel by residents, and we are constantly in communication with our public health colleagues to monitor that situation, to be able to reopen our services as soon as possible. In the meantime, we are still operating a home library service for those residents who are eligible, delivering books to those who are unable to travel. And our digital library is available online and through the app. So if you aren't currently using that, please do make the most of access to 41,000 ebooks, magazines, newspapers, audiobooks that you can still currently access. Questions around being received around our book stock and our IT. For our IT network, we invested in a new library management system. We've installed full fibre broadband across all of our library buildings and upgraded all of the IT equipment to new PC terminals, as well as additional Wi-Fi capability. And that was completed in December 2019, just before lockdown. So unfortunately, we didn't get the benefit of residents being able to access that to its full extent before the lockdown started in March 2020. But the infrastructure is in place. And again, there were questions that were raised around improved marketing and publicity of activities and events that we host across libraries. This is really interesting, and I'd welcome more feedback from the surveys, or via email with details of how you think that can be improved, what would work specifically for you. We want to learn around what works, what doesn't work. We do try to put as much information as we possibly can up in the libraries when they're open, about publicising it on social media and our website, and across all as many other council communications as possible. But if that's not currently working for you, please do provide further information, and we will try to find ways that we can meet that need. So several of the surveys that we received back so far ask questions around what will happen to the books and PCs from the local libraries if they were to close, and we would look to move as much as possible into existing libraries across the rest of the borough. So the books would be either distributed around other libraries or put into our back office stores to be reserved as necessary. Our PCs, we would look to increase the number of PCs where possible across other library sites, but again, that is dependent on size and space within those libraries. And as you could see from the information provided earlier, not all of our PC sessions are fully booked, so it's we'd have to make sure that it was the right thing to do, but we will look to do that. There have been questions about being able to access activities and community spaces if the library wasn't there. and there are a number of voluntary and community groups, community centres across the borough, within your local communities, and we will identify where those are. Other council buildings where you can access services to help lessen the blow of if the library was closed. And one of the questions that has come up several times is around if you're unable to travel to your nearest library, your next nearest library, what does that mean for you? We have a number of different services that we can offer. So there is the home library service if you are eligible, but that does it is tested based upon your ability to travel, and we would look to strengthen that service where possible. In addition to that, we also have a befriending service run by volunteers that allows them to collect library books on your behalf and deliver them, and to maintain social interaction with those people who are unable to travel. So we would signpost people to those services, and work with you as a community to see how best transport links could be improved to neighbouring libraries. We have received several suggestions as to how the service could be operated differently to make the savings required without necessarily closing libraries. One of those options is to reduce hours to save costs across the whole of the library's portfolio. And on the other hand, the suggestion is to increase the number of hours to provide a better service and increase numbers and usage. It's a difficult question and challenge. I suppose the issue that we face at the moment is we do need to reduce costs to save money. So providing an increased number of hours, it would be difficult. We are looking at opportunities to bring in an open plus system to several of our libraries, which would increase the number of hours that the library can operate outside of needing a member of staff to be present, and that option is called Open Plus. But we're not quite there yet with that service. So we are looking at this feedback as to how it can be incorporated into the phase 2 final proposals. And another thing that's come out of the feedback that we've received so far is around income generating ideas, about using libraries for meeting spaces and being able to be hired out of hours. That is something that we are looking to do where possible, but not all of our libraries have sufficient space or layout that would allow meeting spaces to be hired. Some of the libraries are small, they are all in an open plan site and don't necessarily lend themselves to that kind of hire, but there are some buildings across the borough that do lend themselves to that, and we are looking as to how we can increase that capability to generate more income for the library service. There's been questions around cafes and shops on site, and we have been looking at as part of our refurbishment plans. For those of you who have been taking note of the refurbishment at Norbury Library, there is a cafe space in that building. but it isn't necessarily feasible to put a cafe or a shop on every site, again, due to space restrictions and the impact it would then have on the rest of the service. In addition to that, the cafes that operate out of libraries, and we've done research across other library services to see how they operate their cafes, and the feedback that we have received is they don't generate a significant amount of income to the service. It is more about sort of generating a small profit for the operator, and it is small, but the benefit that gives back to the service is that people stay in the libraries longer because they don't have to go elsewhere. So if they're in there studying all day, they can just stop and have a coffee and a sandwich without necessarily needing to go out for lunch halfway through. But it's not a big income generating opportunity. One of the suggestions is around chargeable desk space for small businesses and entrepreneurs, and that's something that we can look to do. The market, I would imagine, has changed significantly because of COVID-19, and we will look to see if this is a potential feasible option across our library buildings. Suggestion around the use of libraries as art galleries and hosting more events and activities. We already host a range of events. In recent years, we've had London Mozart players host chargeable events. We've been working with colleagues in our museum and archive service around how we could potentially use spaces for as gallery spaces, and there are restrictions that we need to consider within there around environmental conditions, security, insurances, but we will be looking to increase that capability, particularly as we build up towards Borough of Culture in 2023. And then fundraising opportunities. It's very difficult for the local authority to do fundraising as an activity. It's much more straightforward for the local community to fundraise and then donate that money specifically for working on library services. And we've been more than willing to work with any community group that were looking to do that. But it is very difficult as a local authority to do that kind of fundraising. Been several suggestions around sharing spaces with schools, businesses, shops. This is something that again would require information coming forward from those local schools and businesses and shops, and at the moment we haven't been receiving that kind of feedback through our surveys. If there are schools and businesses or shops out there that are interested in sharing their spaces to host a local library, then we are more than willing to speak to them around how that would work practically and costs involved, to see if it's possible. But at the moment we haven't received that. We've received it from the public, but we've not received it from businesses or schools. Questions around why we're proposing the 5 libraries that we are for closure, and could we close other libraries instead. From the criteria to why we suggested these libraries in the first place was around the low footfall, number of issues, digital access, as well as the high maintenance costs that we've got for these 5 libraries, and that's in comparison to the other 8 libraries across the service, and it's for those reasons that we've suggested Broad Green, Bradmore Green, Sanderstead, Shirley and Selsdon libraries Broad Green, Bradmore Green, Sanderstead, Shirley and South Norwood Library for closure or cost neutral operation. There have been questions around whether we could mothball libraries and reopen when the council has more money. Unfortunately, the operating costs would still be there. We still have the staff. We still have to maintain the buildings from a health and safety perspective, and so that doesn't ease the burden on the savings that we do need to make across the council. Requests for a mobile library service to replace the buildings that would potentially close. Again, that would require investment from the service to create a mobile library, and from examples from other services, it doesn't always deliver everything that people expect it to. So it's something that we would have to look at very carefully before we would commit to that. And the questions have been received around the number of volunteers and how we use volunteers within the service. And we do have a volunteer coordinator across the Better Impact service to try and get volunteers in to support. Generally, they are there to support on specific events and activities. So around giving advice for IT, sort of the Silver Surfers, for job clubs, for other specific activities rather than replacing librarians. So at 12 o'clock today, there is another webinar with colleagues from from community libraries across the country. They are all part of the Community Run Libraries National Peer Network, and we will be talking to them about their experiences of running community run libraries, the different models that they use, and how potentially that could work for any of the 5 libraries that we've suggested. So as a reminder, that is following this session at 12 o'clock. So at this stage, I will hand over to look at some of the questions that we received during the live webinar now. So I just wondered whether one of the moderators wanted to come in and help with those.
Rob, shall I start on this? As you were presenting, I was answering some of the questions which have been raised in the chat. I guess there were a few which were kind of similar. So some were around whether we can release figures across the library service, not just for the 5 libraries affected, people wanting to make comparisons between sites, and I don't see there being a problem with that. I think we could put some of that information on the consultation website.
Yep.
Look, apologies to everyone, I'm trying to multitask, so I'm not coming to all the questions in order, so sorry if I'm out of order. I will try and get to all of your questions before the end of the session. Some people are coming up with suggestions or, you know, kind of potential options for some of our libraries about how they might be able to increase revenue or whatever. And I think these are all good ideas. Do make sure that you complete the online consultation. I think that's really important because that will make sure that these ideas get captured. I think there were some other questions around whether the consultation was genuine or not, and I want to assure people and take this opportunity to reiterate that this is a statutory consultation. We're taking it very seriously. That's why we're having these webinars and other ways that people can participate. No decisions have been made already. We hope that you know, some potentially cost neutral models to the council come forward. So we will maintain our library service, and look, I hope that we can work with residents in the community in order to do that. Let's have a look. There are some others in here, and I'll try and get them as we continue. How does that sound, Rob?
I think that sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, I don't know if some of the moderators want to bring in some of the questions that we've had previously to the session that people have submitted. Maybe we can talk about some of those. I don't know.
Yes, not a problem. So I have a question here, probably for either of you, Rob or Councillor Lewis, which is, why are community-run libraries being pushed mid-consultation?
Yes, yeah. Look, so I think this is a question from Elizabeth Ash. So thanks, Elizabeth, for your question. They're not being pushed mid-consultation. Obviously, you know, before we started the consultation, I think we started talking about community run models. I guess the founding principle of the consultation is the need for the council to save money, and so that could mean closure. But I'm hopeful that through working with the community, we can develop some community run models which are cost neutral to the council. So they're not being pushed mid-consultation. There's no particular agenda here. I mean, I'm just hoping that, you know, we can try and save as much of our library service as we can.
Yeah, and I think to add to that, there have been sort of questions raised to us via email around how we could potentially operate community and voluntary run libraries, and that those people who asked us don't necessarily have the background knowledge around that. And so we wanted to bring something forward from a group of people who've been through the process, who currently operate community-run libraries, to be able to give their experiences around how that's worked, and the range of models that are available within the community-run library sector. As Councillor Lewis said, we are open to all potential opportunities. And we will consider all of those in detail and in full before we propose a phase 2. But for us, this is about information gathering in the first instance. It's not about a push towards community-run libraries, although we have seen that model has worked in other places across the country.
Rob, there's been a couple of questions about well, one from Libby around inequalities impact assessment, and then Michelle asked about crime statistics and that kind of thing, whether it can be factored in. As part of the consultation, we will be conducting equalities impact assessments across our library, across those library sites. We've been working with the DCMS to find the best way, or, you know, best practice around consultation, and how we do it, how we make sure we bring all the relevant information in. So that will be part of the consultation process. It's a really important part of it. We need to see how different parts of the community will be impacted but by any decisions which are made. And obviously, you know, things like crime statistics, I imagine, could be factored into that assessment. Rob, do you have any more detail on that?
Yeah, so we are developing the qualities impact assessment. It doesn't have to be prepared and presented until we've got detailed proposals as to around what we're looking to do, which is the phase 2 part of the consultation. So from this perspective, it's around sort of, we've put a suggestion out there around closing libraries or being operated on a cost neutral basis, to give a bit of a framework for people to work from, for us to gather that information and develop proposals then that can be taken forward. And at that stage, we'll be able to assess what impacts that will have on a community. So I'm not suggesting that this is what will happen, but just as a scenario, if one of the libraries in the consultation was switched for another library as part of this, the feedback that we've received, well, that would then change the whole of the equalities impact assessment. So we don't want to be sort of providing that information at this stage, while these are just suggestions. It just becomes in a later date. Or a better example would be if a community and voluntary group came in and operated a library on exactly the same terms and conditions as the council do now, then the impact is minimal, and so we won't know that until we get to the phase 2 proposals. But we are working on developing that information now, and we'll share it as part of phase 2.
Great, thanks, Rob. Do any of the moderators want to bring in any other questions which have been raised in advance of the meeting?
Yeah, of course. I've got one here. I think this one is for Rob. Can the full year-on-year data on our library service, which has already been provided to SIPFA, be made available to residents to inform them? And if not, why not?
Yeah, there's no reason why that information cannot be shared, and we'll look to publish that on our consultation website. We have the information for 1920. Obviously 2020-21 financial year is not available, although the service has been sort of significantly reduced because of the impact of COVID. But we will look to publish that information as soon as possible.
Thank you. And I've got another question here for Councillor Lewis. Please outline the funding and support provided to Upper Norwood Library Hub by Croydon Council. Who provides and delivers the library offer, and how is this funded?
Yeah, so Upper Norwood Library is a library which is actually in Lambeth, that sits right on the border. The border between Lambeth and Croydon runs in the middle of the road, and you know, it's used by residents from both sides of the border. So a few years ago, a decision was made to run it as a community run library. There's still some revenue support that goes to that library from Croydon Council, and that was a decision or an agreement that was made in very different financial times. So I think probably if we were looking to run Upper Norwood Library now as a community run library, it might be a different model with a different level of funding coming from Croydon. But having said that, it's run by a trust, and Lambeth provide some of the library functions within it. So I think people from Upper Norwood Library are going to be on the call a bit later on this morning, so we can find out a bit more about their model, and we can ask them questions about how they do it and what some of the challenges and benefits are. So yeah.
Okay, so we have another question that is probably for Rob. Sarah, who's here as well, may also want to chime in as well. But it's Croydon Council currently spends £9.11 per head on library services compared to an average of £13.09 out of London boroughs. What is the proposed amount the council will be spending per head if these cuts go ahead?
That's a very good question. I don't have the figure off the top of my head at the moment, but I can come back and answer that outside of the meeting directly, and we'll also publish that as part of our FAQs.
I'll just add there, thank you, Lucy, that obviously, well, we've put a proposal for sort of budget, indicative budget saving. Obviously, the final proposals will cost a particular amount depending on how they come out and may change over the years. So we can give an indication based on the current budget proposals, but obviously the final per head spend will depend on what the actual model of library delivery is at the end of the consultation. So just to be really clear about what type of information we can provide now in the FAQs.
Thank you for that. I think we've got time for one final question. Okay, this is for Rob or Sarah. There are currently on average an average of 29,747 Croydon residents per library. If the proposed cuts go through, there will be an average of 48,339 Croydon residents per library, the second worst London borough. How can it be argued this is an adequate library service?
I
Do you
think,
want to have a go ahead, Rob, sorry.
I was going to say, I think it's a very good question, and that's part of the need for the surveys to get feedback from yourselves as members of the public and library users as to what impact that would have on those libraries. As we can see from the information provided earlier, that the overall trend is downward around library usage, and so it's about making sure that we have an efficient and effective library service for our members. And if fewer people are actually visiting libraries and issuing books and using IT sessions, then we need to make sure that we've got that balance right. But this is part of the consultation and the reason we're asking these questions. Want to add anything to that, Sarah?
I think you've encapsulated it really. I mean, the number of libraries per head of population is just one measure, and actually what we need to do is make sure that the library service is responsive to the demands of residents who want to use that service in the future within the budget that we've got to be able to spend on it. So it's just one measure of many in terms of what's an effective service.
Okay, so I think that might be all the time that we have at the moment. We're just coming to 11:30. We have had quite a lot of questions through, so we will collate them and share them at a later time. I think Lucy, one of my fellow moderators, is going to launch a poll shortly. It'd be good to get some feedback on the session, but I'll just pass you back to Rob and Councillor Lewis for some final words.
Well, look, I'd just like to reiterate that we will try and get through all the questions, whether they've been posted in the chat or submitted in advance, and we will write to people outside of this session. I'd like to thank all of our library staff who worked hard to try and make these sessions possible, and thank you to everyone who's attended. It's been interesting, and appreciate that it's a difficult situation for everyone really, and these are decisions that none of us really want to be taking, but we're having to take because of the financial situation of the council. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lewis. Yeah, I'd just like to echo Councillor Lewis's thanks to all the staff for their hard work during the consultation period and also during COVID restrictions. To thank you all for your time this morning and the questions that you've asked, both in advance of the meeting, for filling in the surveys, and for your time and effort and passion for the library service. So the poll has now gone live, so hopefully you can all see that and can start to fill that in. That'd be gratefully received if you could. So yeah, again, thank you all for attending this session. A recording of the webinar will be made available on our library's consultation webpage, and we will be responding to all the questions that have been submitted. We'll be posting the frequently asked questions and the additional information that's already been requested will be published. If you have any additional feedback, please contact us at librariesconsultation@croydon.gov.uk. We also have a dedicated telephone line, which is 020 7884 5159. And this is an answer phone service. So if you leave your contact details, then a member of the libraries team will get back in touch with you. And also please continue to fill in the survey. Your feedback is very much appreciated and will help us to shape how our library service looks going forwards. Yeah, and just like to say a final thank you, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Thank you.